Huh? Identify yourself or prepare to test your spirit. I'm busy preparing mind and body to review the Samurai Morkborg spin-off called Ronin, and your chittering offends me. I am just a regular human samurai looking to enjoy hot springs as you are. Clearly you are a demon in the form of a roach, taking the shape of a man, wearing the armor of a warrior. Did the antenna give it away? Look, I don't want any trouble. Really, I do just seek the warmth and comfort of hot springs here. Fine. You wait your turn, though. Soon I will enlighten viewers about Ronin's savage survival, monstrous yokai, and stylish gloom. I just need to finish my meditation. And if I enter the waters before you're done soaking, noble swordsman, then I'll slice your disgusting head clean off. But seriously, let's start the review. Time is short and these folks need my take on this Morkborg spin-off. Very well, fellow samurai. I already know you're not a real samurai like me, so... Oh, right, that's right. Anyway, go ahead.
Ronin is a supernatural feudal Japan and anime-inspired tabletop RPG based on the rules and visual design of Morkborg. It was created by Slightly Reckless Games and published in 2024 after a successful Kickstarter. I think the best place to start is right here with this list of inspirations, aside from Morkborg itself. This is mostly a must-watch list of anime and films centered around both mythical and historical samurai. And here we go with what this game brings to the table. If the black on yellow with wildly artistic layouts and millions of different fonts is something you're okay with, and you like Morkborg rules and supernatural feudal Japan stuff, then you're in luck. In this video, I want to show you what the physical books look and feel like for this game, then walk you through the most salient points and features of the 128-page rulebook, throw in a Patreon plug somewhere in there, and then share with you my takeaways from actually running this game, and then finally give you my honest pros and cons about this game as a whole. This is actually the first of 2 videos that I'll be doing on Ronin, the second of which will be a first look at an official expansion of the game that will be launching a crowdfunding campaign called Densetsu, or Legend. But for this video, we'll just be focusing on the core rulebook. All right, first, let's take a look at the 2 versions of the physical book. They're both in that familiar 6" by 8.5" format that you'll see in a lot of Morkborg spin-off books. The standard cover version of the book has a matte finish with some relief on the front. The spine is smooth. The back has the skeleton dude debossed. You can definitely feel some depth difference when handling this book. There is a red ribbon bookmark. The front end papers are full of quick reference tables, many of which are not necessarily found anywhere else in the book. So you definitely want to circle back to this spread if you're running the game. The internal paper is semi-glossy and relatively heavy. You know you're in quality offset print territory when you see this company's name. Standart is the same company that has printed a lot of Free League's books, as well as those by Gavin Norman's Necrotic Gnome Company, which of course publishes Old School Essentials. Also, anytime you see a book specifying the actual paper type and weight used, then that means the creators are proud of that paper because it's nice paper. Credit for the game itself goes to Sasha Lightfoot and Dominic Riazzi. I'm actually going to cover the content of this game in this video, but here I just wanted to show you the quality of the print job in the physical book and how it sort of looks in hand. The print quality is indeed about as good as you can get, because look, let's face it, Morkborg's spin-off books are largely about mood and presentation, and you have to have fidelity in your printed matter to pull that off. The end papers at the back have more useful and exclusive GM reference info, pretty much indispensable if you're running this game, unless you've committed all the rules to heart already. The deluxe cover version of this game is leatherette. Let me wipe my lens here real quick. The cover is leatherette and has very tastefully understated debossed foil artwork on the front. The spine has debossed foil lettering, and the back has the publisher's logo, which is Slightly Reckless Games. The interior of this deluxe version is identical to the regular version. High quality paper, useful end papers, about 130 pages of pure intensity.
Before you witness more yokai slaying brilliance, heed this. If you value these reviews and yearn for more of my fearless commentary, drop a few coins on the Dave Thaumavore RPG Reviews Patreon. Your support fuels this channel's growth and grants you entry to a Patreon-only Discord. It is there where I reveal behind-the-scenes details, plus more personal opinions on games, tech, and other stuff. Most crucially, your feedback there shapes future reviews. So if you want more, and you want it your way, join the Patreon and then hop on the Discord. Now time is precious, so back to the review.
All right, so the idea behind the setting here is that we're in what could only be described as a surrogate for feudal Japan. But one day there was this solar eclipse, except instead of lasting 1 or 2 minutes, the eclipse lasted months and years. And in that time, the land became cursed with supernatural threats and degradation of nature. Streams and rivers all glow a weird light, and the people living on this East Asian island called Kagenoshima, or Shadow Island, have all become hardened and bitter with the hard times. If you're not familiar with Morkborg, there's this one central conceit where the GM rolls dice every day in-game to see how the apocalypse is progressing and if the world ends. It's the same deal here, presented in a sort of ancient Chinese circle cipher. Pretty cool, but a bit hard to read. So here's the island. It's got 11 named locations, which might be a bit oversimplified. Just like the map in the original Morkborg, this is almost more just abstract and artsy than a functional map. But like the original, this is definitely one of those games that is more vibes and moods than simulationism. Case in point, if you look at each of these location descriptions, they are wildly visual and provocative on the page, but the actual description of each is just wisps of plot hooks and concepts. For the Imperial Palace, there's a shogun whose power continues to grow even in these dark and cursed times, but you don't really get any details. Those are for the GM to fill in. There is a fortress of demons, a port of the dead, and a gambler's pit here. These don't have a hard location on the island so much as they're just meant to feed your imagination. You're expected to either build Kagenoshima's cartography yourself or not care enough about it to even bother. It's not all wisps and hints though. At the core of this game, you're meant to play as one kind of vagabond or another, a Ronin or masterless warrior, and you are generally meant to fight against the powers that be, as well as any demonic or folkloric creatures called yokai who stand in your way. Now that I think about it, actually, I'm surprised the creators didn't include Ninja Scroll in their list of inspirations. You gotta check out Ninja Scroll if you get the chance. It very much matches what this game is trying to do. Character creation is one spread. And see, that's the bargain you're striking here with Morkborg-based games like this. You don't get a bunch of lore and setting explanation, the lack of which does put a burden on the GM a little bit, but it is really easy on the players, especially casual or low commitment players who don't want to read any rules until 5 or 10 minutes before the game starts, if at all. This is what your character sheet looks like. There are 4 main stats, each defined by a 3d6 roll and producing a modifier that ranges from -3 to +3. When you make any kind of test in the game, you're rolling a d20 and adding modifiers from your stats, weapons, abilities, environment, and any other sources that come into play. The goal is to meet or exceed a difficulty rating set by the GM. There are 10 archetypes to choose from, and they come with more stat bonuses or penalties to throw on top of what you rolled, and one of 6 possible special abilities to start with. For the Forgotten Ronin, these abilities mostly center around bonuses to using a sword, naturally. A drunken monk might be able to throw fire or get combat bonuses if they're drunk. I mean, in a way, these Morkborg games are designed so that they can be played while drunk. You can be a sort of cursed shinobi that has creepy stealth abilities, or an onyogi, a sort of spirit medium who specializes in quickly banishing spirits and demons. A yamabushi, or mountain warrior, who is styled like a hermit who can deal a whooping. And maybe the greatest archetype of all, a reckless sumo who has some very tanky abilities. Okay, so I've said repeatedly that all these Morkborg games are super simple and easy to play, but Ronin does have a few extra moving parts that make it more interesting and ties the mechanics to the overall theme of samurai-inspired warrior. The first of those moving parts is the honor system. These are points that the GM has discretion in giving and taking away by declaring anywhere from a D2 to a D10 be rolled by the player. There are no fewer than 10 sets of different tenets that players can elect to adopt for their character, or you can make your own. It's kind of up to the players themselves to keep track of these and judge their behavior against them. I can't imagine the GM keeping up with all these different sets of tenets for different characters, though maybe it becomes second nature if you've run this game a number of times. But the important thing about the honor system in this game is that it guides player behavior and acts as a vehicle to get them in and keep them in character, or at least thinking like their character. Of course, the player needs to actually care about their honor point pool. If there's apathy there, then the honor points have no meaning. But the game really does want you to care about honor. Anytime a character insults an NPC or their name in a grave way, then a blood feud is created. And if a fight to the death is refused, that offending character loses 5 honor permanently. Winning that duel will grant 3 honor and send the challenger to Japanese hell, or just straight up death. You gotta love this spread, a really well done display of the basic weapons your character might start with. There are essentially 20 magic spells called texts that certain characters can cast, and although I don't want to reveal them in this video, I do want to point out that if you roll a 1 when trying to use a text, that's a fumble that triggers a d20 roll on the table of so-called Kami no Ikari, or God's Vengeance. These are for the most part pretty game-changing for your character, and honestly, the hope is that a character actually picks up one of these during a session because they're a lot of fun. There are a number of warnings in the book about the depiction of ritualistic suicide, specifically seppuku, but it's actually a lot of fun. You can do this once per character, but this is a last-ditch way to gain honor points. You have to pass a spirit test and then a resilience test, which are both core stats. But if you do, then you gain 2d6 plus 2 honor points and then die. But death is not the end in this game. Whenever you die, you show up in an underworld called Yomi with your HP and abilities refreshed. And there you face off against one kind of demon or another. If you kill this boss demon, you return to the world of the living. It's a lot of fun. Dueling is another little bonus mechanic that Ronin brings to the table. On top of the standard combat rules from Mork Borg that I'm kind of just glossing over here, there's a special kind of fight where you choose from one of 3 dueling stratagems: attack, guard, or riposte. It's very high stakes, especially riposte, which if you fail to roll successfully on, you are dead. Virtues are the game's metacurrency. You've probably seen these a million times by now. They're used to deal max damage, re-roll some dice, bend the rules a little bit. You get 1 or a few virtues replenished every 6-hour rest. One little mechanic that gave me a chuckle was the haiku. You can make a roll during a special resting period called meditation in order to either gain a virtue point or a penalty to all spirit rolls. But the far more entertaining form of this rule is for the player to actually write a haiku as a prayer to the gods. And depending on if the haiku sucks or not, they'll gain a curse or a blessing. This is potentially a lot of fun. There are 20 demons, yokai, and other creatures of legend to pull from the core book. The mechanical makeup of each of these creatures is relatively simple. I don't really have any complaints here, except that maybe it would have been nice to have a critical weakness for each that didn't necessarily involve combat, or maybe a table at the end of the section that generates mystical weaknesses so that players have to investigate in-game to find a fast way to kill some of these things. One odd thing was that the last 4 listed enemies in this section have English-only names, which took me out of the immersion on my first read-through. Not a big deal, but it did seem kind of random. And at the end of the book, there is a 15-page sample adventure. This is what I used as the basis of the session that I ran myself. I did have some readability and referencing issues due to the crazy layout style. So let me share with you the main takeaways from my running this game. Damage reduction can be a drag. Armor in these Mork Borg games will reduce incoming damage pretty reliably, and that concept is just fine, but when you're battling snakes and scorpions and other relatively minor beasts, and their natural armor is taking off up to 6 or 8 damage on a successful attack, it sort of drags the combat down a bit and also seems unrealistic. Dueling rules are excellent. So this game offers an innovation to the Mork Borg combat paradigm by allowing a one-on-one fight. Since all roles in this style of game are player-facing, you can't really have a duel between 2 players, so it's going to have to be 1 PC versus 1 NPC. But within that limitation, there is a surprisingly fun experience to be had. The duel has tactics built into them. There are different consequences for each of the 3 choices, and you have to weigh them on every roll. It's still a very simplistic and abstract approach to combat, but it turned out to be more fun and satisfying than the regular combat rules. could use some stealth rules. Since you're able to play as a ninja type character, there was an expectation with our table that there would be some backstabbing bonuses or other stealth rules that could be exploited. Morkborg rules in general don't accommodate that sort of gameplay very much, and the Ronin rules didn't really mention them either. Honor points have a lot of potential. The game really does make the theme come to life when everyone is concerned about their honor points, but honor points themselves don't have any concrete mechanical benefits or uses. There are some soft applications for them, for example in NPC interactions at the GM's discretion, but you can't spend them to pull off special moves or to gain anything of any mechanical value. This is very easily homebrewable, and I'm glad the honor points are there as a basis for all kinds of interesting innovations. So alright, in conclusion, here are my overall thoughts on Ronin. Cons. Layout is challenging for usage. I know some of you might find this brash, space-wasting, balls-to-the-wall skater mag approach to layout just not your cup of tea, and I get it. It can be really hard to read and reference. I occasionally did have a hard time referencing the rules when I was trying to run this game, but I have a couple of counterpoints. The first is that this is a sort of modern RPG art form, pioneered by Johan Noor of original Morkborg fame, and if you take it for what it is, then Ronin is actually a really good example of this art form. My second counterpoint to my own gripe here is that the creators of this game provide a plain text version of the entire game for free. It's hard to complain too much about that, and I guess a third point is that the end papers of the book contain about maybe 80% of all the rules you'll need to run this game. Those did come in handy when I ran it. Morkborg combat is basic. As I mentioned a minute ago, the armor damage reduction can slow things down, and there are no stealth rules out of the box. There are some easy tweaks and little homebrewed rules you could add to Morkborgy combat to make it a lot more compelling, and I'm willing to wager, if you look at the many third-party supplements that people have published over the years for Morkborg itself, as well as Pirate Borg and maybe eventually Ronin, you will find incredible innovations to the combat system. Pros. Theme is fun. I'm not sure I've met a person who didn't enjoy a good samurai tale from time to time, and the idea of katana swinging combat paired with hunting down corrupt shoguns and yokai is just irresistible. Preparing to play this game is also a great excuse to watch all of the stuff in the inspirations list, and don't forget Ninja Scroll. Honor and tenets. The honor points, which are acquired and lost by PCs who follow or violate their personal tenets, are really at the heart of this game's ability to connect with the theme. As the GM, you have to hold them to their tenets, and don't forget to dole out those honor points freely and take them away. But as I mentioned a minute ago, the honor points system would be best served if there was more that players could do with them, aside from just using them as a score. Afterlife challenge. The chance at a second life if you defeat a special enemy in the Yomi underworld is not just a very thematic concept, it's a fun play experience. It gives players a second chance with their characters, but not a third chance, which I really appreciate. This is just one of those conceits that I would put at the top of my list for things I'd add to my own RPG. Free plain text version. You can get this entire game for free in plain text from the Slightly Reckless Games website. Now, this version doesn't include the sample adventure at the end of the color version, but I still think this is quite generous and extremely useful if you plan on running or playing the game. You can publish stuff for this game. The creators have put out a third-party license that is similar to Morkborg's, where you can create new content based on Ronin and publish it as your own copyrighted work. This agreement is simple and easy to read. It's always nice to see straightforward third-party licenses like these. So that's it for Ronin. Like I mentioned at the top of the video, I'll be covering the expansion for this game in one of my next videos. Let me know what you think about Ronin and Morkborg combat and feudal Japanese fantasy down in the comments. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.